They say you never really know someone until you see them at their worst. I used to think that was just something bitter people told themselves after a bad breakup. I was wrong, dead wrong. My name is David Patterson, and this is the story of how my 12-year marriage to the woman I thought was my soulmate imploded in the most spectacular and devastating way possible. We met in college, University of Michigan, fall semester of 2008. She was studying marketing. I was in engineering. Classic story. Mutual friends, late-night study sessions, first date at a coffee shop that's probably a vape store now. Her name was Jessica Reynolds before she became Jessica Patterson, and for over a decade, I believed she was the best thing that ever happened to me. We built what I thought was a solid life together. I worked as a structural engineer for a firm in Detroit, pulling in a comfortable six-figure salary. Jessica climbed the corporate ladder in marketing, eventually landing a position as a senior marketing director at a pharmaceutical company. We had 2 kids, Emma, who just turned 9, and Tyler, who's 7. We lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in Birmingham, Michigan, one of those picture-perfect suburbs where everyone mows their lawn on Saturday and waves to their neighbors. From the outside, we had it all. The successful careers, the beautiful children, the house with the white picket fence. Literally, we had a white picket fence. Inside, I thought we were happy. Sure, we had our rough patches like any couple. The sleepless nights with newborns, the arguments about whose turn it was to handle the kids' doctor appointments, the occasional tension about money, even though we were doing well. But I loved her. God, I loved her so much it physically hurt sometimes when I looked at her across the dinner table, still beautiful at 34, laughing at one of Tyler's ridiculous knock-knock jokes. I trusted her completely. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was not paying attention to the signs. Looking back now, with the cruel clarity of hindsight, they were all there. The late nights at the office that became more frequent starting in January of this year. The new attention to her appearance, joining a gym, buying expensive clothes, getting her hair done every 3 weeks instead of every 2 months. The phone that was suddenly password protected after years of lying face up on the kitchen counter. The way she'd smile at her screen and quickly flip it over when I walked into the room. I told myself it was nothing. She was stressed at work. There was a big product launch coming up. She deserved to feel good about herself. I was being a supportive husband by not questioning it, by giving her space, by trusting her. Trust but verify? I never even considered the verify part. Why would I? This was Jessica, my wife, the mother of my children. The woman who cried at our wedding and whispered that she'd love me until her last breath. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a Tuesday in late March. Nothing special about the day, just another early spring morning in Michigan, the kind where you can't decide if you need a jacket or not. I was running late for a meeting with a client about a new commercial development project downtown. In my rush, I grabbed the wrong phone from the kitchen counter. We had the same model, same color. An easy mistake. I didn't realize it until I was already in my car halfway to the office, and the phone buzzed with a text message. The preview popped up on the lock screen. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. The sender's name was just a single letter. B. My stomach dropped. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I told myself it was nothing. A friend, a colleague, some inside joke I wasn't privy to, but my heart was already racing. That primal instinct that knows danger before your brain catches up. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, hands shaking as I stared at the phone. Jessica's phone. I knew her passcode. It used to be our anniversary, EO615 for June 15th. But when I tried it, the phone buzzed angrily. Access denied. She'd changed it. When had she changed it? And why? I sat there for 20 minutes, missing my meeting entirely, staring at that message preview like it might rearrange itself into something innocent if I looked long enough. Last night was incredible. Last night, Jessica had said she was working late on the product launch presentation. She'd come home around 10:30, kissed me on the cheek, said she was exhausted, and went straight to bed. My phone, the real one, still sitting on the kitchen counter at home, started ringing. I could see it in my mind, buzzing away, probably Jessica realizing she had my phone and I had hers. The irony wasn't lost on me. If she'd just been a little less rushed, a little more careful, I might have gone on living in blissful ignorance. But she wasn't careful, and I couldn't unknow what I'd seen. I drove home, called in sick to work, something I rarely did. Jessica's car was already gone from the driveway. She must have left for her office. I found my phone on the counter, 5 missed calls from her, 3 text messages asking me to call her back, saying she had my phone by accident. I didn't call back. Instead, I sat on the kitchen table, both phones in front of me, and tried to think rationally. There could be an explanation. A reasonable, innocent explanation. Jessica wouldn't cheat on me. We had children together. We had a life together. We were happy. Weren't we? I spent the next hour doing what I do best, analyzing a problem methodically. The engineer in me needed data before drawing conclusions. First, I created a new email account Jessica didn't know about. Then I forwarded myself every suspicious text thread I could find on her phone. There weren't many. She'd been careful, deleting most conversations. But people always miss something. In her deleted folder, I found fragments, meeting times, hotel names. Nothing explicit enough to be definitive, but enough to paint a picture I didn't want to see. The contact labeled B had no last name, no email, nothing. Just a phone number. I ran the number through a reverse lookup service. Nothing. Probably a burner phone or unlisted. Smart. My own phone buzzed again. Jessica, naturally. David, I really need my phone. I have an important meeting at 2. Can you bring it to me? I checked the time. 11:47 a.m. I typed back, sorry, stuck in a meeting myself. Can you survive without it for a few hours? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I guess I'll have to, but I need it before 5. It's really important. Important. Right. I set both phones on the kitchen table and stared at them like they might spontaneously confess Jessica's sins. They didn't. What I needed was context. The affair, if that's what this was, seemed recent based on the dates I'd found. January, maybe early February at the earliest. But affairs don't happen in a vacuum. There's always a catalyst, a connection point. I opened my laptop and logged into our cell phone account. Jessica didn't know I had the master password. I'd set up the family plan 3 years ago and never mentioned it. Why would I? We trusted each other. Trusted. Past tense. The call logs loaded slowly, months of data populating the screen. I filtered for the mystery number. The first call appeared on January 8th, a Thursday. 17 minutes? After that, the calls became regular. 2 or 3 times a week, varying lengths. The pattern shifted in late February. More calls, longer duration. And starting in March, there were text messages, hundreds of them. But here's what made my stomach drop. The calls during work hours were brief. Professional, almost. 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes. The evening calls, the ones after 8 p.m. when she claimed to be working late, Those stretched to 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer. She'd been building something. A relationship that started professional and became personal. I pulled up Jessica's work calendar, which synced to our shared family account. In January, she'd added a new recurring meeting. Hope Springs consultation weekly. Every Thursday at 2 p.m., Hope Springs. I Googled it. Hope Springs Adoption Agency, Detroit. A small operation, family-owned, specializing in domestic infant adoptions. Their website showed a modest office in Midtown, stock photos of happy families, testimonials from grateful parents. The pharmaceutical company Jessica worked for, Northfield Pharmaceuticals, had a corporate giving program. I'd heard her mention it before. They partnered with nonprofits, provided grants, volunteered time. This could be legitimate. Jessica consulting with an adoption agency through work. Completely innocent. Except for the "last night was incredible" text message. I dug deeper into the Hope Springs website. The staff page showed 4 employees. Executive Director, Brandon Cole. Photos showed a man in his late 30s, handsome in that polished professional way. Dark hair, confident smile, expensive suit. Brandon. B. I felt something cold settle in my chest. The website listed his credentials. MBA from Wayne State, 10 years in nonprofit management, passionate about connecting children with loving families. His bio went on about his commitment to ethical adoption practices and transparency. I pulled up Jessica's work emails next. She used the same password for everything. Our wedding date plus her birth year. Another thing she apparently changed on her phone, but nowhere else. Searching for Hope Springs brought up dozens of emails. The first was from early January, a formal introduction from Brandon Cole thanking Northfield Pharmaceuticals for considering Hope Springs as a grant recipient. He'd specifically requested to meet with someone from the marketing department to discuss a partnership. Jessica had volunteered. The early emails were professional. Meeting confirmations, grant proposal discussions, budget reviews. Jessica's responses were crisp and businesslike. But around mid-February, the tone shifted. Warmer, more personal. Inside jokes appeared. References to lunch meetings that weren't on her calendar. One email from March 3rd made me pause. Brandon, thanks for dinner last night. I haven't laughed like that in years. You were right about the risotto. Looking forward to our site visit Thursday. J. Dinner. Not a business dinner, just dinner. I checked our credit card statements. No charges for restaurants that night. She'd paid cash, probably. Or he had. My phone rang. My actual phone this time, not Jessica's. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Mr. Patterson, this is Detective Amy Brennan with the Detroit Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. Do you have a few minutes to talk? My mind went blank. I'm sorry, what is this about? We're investigating some irregularities at Hope Springs Adoption Agency. Your wife, Jessica Patterson, is listed as a consultant for the organization. We'd like to ask you some questions about her involvement. The kitchen felt like it was tilting. What kind of irregularities? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Are you available to come to our office this afternoon? Say, 3 p.m.? I looked at the phones on my table, at the emails still open on my laptop, at the life I thought I knew disintegrating in real time. Yes, I heard myself say. I'll be there. She gave me an address downtown and hung up. I sat motionless for several minutes, trying to process. The police were investigating Hope Springs. Jessica was involved with Hope Springs. Jessica was involved with Brandon Cole, who ran Hope Springs. This wasn't just an affair. Jessica's phone buzzed. Another text from B. Did you get your phone back? We need to talk before the meeting tonight. The Chicago couple is getting impatient. Chicago couple. Meeting tonight. I checked Jessica's calendar again. Nothing scheduled for tonight. Whatever this meeting was, it wasn't official. Another text came through. They're offering $85K. We should take it. The birth mother is due in 2 weeks and they've already wired the deposit. $85,000. Birth mother. Deposit. The words rearranged themselves in my head, forming a picture I couldn't unsee. They weren't just running an adoption agency, they were selling babies. My hands started shaking. I read the text again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there was no other interpretation. A couple in Chicago offering $85,000. A birth mother due in 2 weeks. A deposit already wired. This was what the police were investigating. Financial crimes. Not an affair, though that was apparently happening too, but something much worse. Human trafficking. My wife was involved in human trafficking. I grabbed my phone and called the number Detective Brennan had used. Brennan. This is David Patterson. We just spoke. I need to move our meeting up, right now. I have information you need to see. There was a pause. What kind of information? Text messages, financial records. I think my wife's phone has evidence of your investigation. Mr. Patterson, how did you obtain your wife's phone? We have the same model. I grabbed hers by mistake this morning. But that doesn't matter right now. There's a meeting tonight. They're selling a baby to a couple in Chicago for $85,000. I'm sending officers to your location. Don't touch anything else on that phone. Don't delete anything. And Mr. Patterson, don't contact your wife. I won't. We'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully as if it might explode. Through the kitchen window, I could see my neighbor trimming his hedges. A mom walked by pushing a stroller. Normal Tuesday afternoon in Birmingham, Michigan. Inside my house, the evidence of my wife's crimes sat on the kitchen table, waiting for the police to arrive. The next 48 hours moved in a strange dual rhythm. Glacially slow when I was alone with my thoughts. Sickeningly fast when things actually happened. Detective Brennan arrived within 20 minutes of our call. She was younger than I'd imagined from her voice on the phone, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and sharp eyes that took in everything. She brought a tech specialist with her, a quiet guy named Kevin who handled Jessica's phone like it was made of glass. We'll need to image the entire device, Brennan explained, sitting at my kitchen table while Kevin worked at the counter. Everything on here could be evidence: text messages, call logs, emails, photos, app data, the whole digital footprint. I nodded, watching Kevin connect Jessica's phone to some kind of specialized laptop. How long will that take? Hour, maybe 2. But Mr. Patterson, I need to be clear about something. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Once we start this process, there's no going back. If we find evidence of criminal activity, we're obligated to act on it. That includes arresting your wife. The words hung in the air. Your wife? The woman I'd married 12 years ago. The mother of my children. I understand, I said. Do you? Brennan's eyes searched my face. Because in my experience, understanding it intellectually and being ready for it emotionally are two very different things. I thought about that text message. The Chicago couple. $85,000. A baby being sold like a commodity. I'm ready, I said. Kevin finished the phone imaging at 11:47 a.m. Brennan thanked me, gave me her card, and told me to expect a call within 24 hours. They took Jessica's phone with them as evidence. I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out what to do next. Jessica was at a site visit in Toledo, not due back until tomorrow evening. Emma and Tyler were at school, blissfully unaware that their world was about to implode. I had maybe 30 hours before everything came crashing down. I spent the afternoon doing something I should have done weeks ago, really digging into Hope Springs Adoption Agency. Their website was professionally designed, warm, and welcoming. Photos of smiling families, testimonials from grateful parents, a mission statement about bringing hope to families dreaming of children. Brandon Cole's bio described him as a passionate advocate for children's welfare, with 15 years of experience in adoption services. It all looked legitimate, perfect even. But I'd learned that perfect was often a mask for something rotten underneath. I started searching for reviews, complaints, anything that might reveal cracks in the facade. Most of what I found was positive, glowing testimonials that matched the ones on their website. But buried in a forum for adoptive parents, I found something interesting. A post from 8 months ago. Has anyone worked with Hope Springs in Michigan? They contacted us about a potential match, but the fees seem really high. They're asking for $65,000 total, which is way more than other agencies we've talked to. The responses were mixed. Some people said adoption was expensive, that you paid for quality service. Others expressed concern. One person noted that Hope Springs wasn't accredited by the Council on Accreditation, which was unusual for an agency their size. I kept digging. Found another forum post from 6 months ago. We were matched with a birth mother through Hope Springs, but she changed her mind at the last minute. The agency kept our $20,000 deposit. Is that normal? The responses to that one were more critical. Several people said reputable agencies typically refunded most fees if an adoption fell through. One person suggested the poster contact a lawyer. I was taking notes, building a timeline, when my phone rang. Detective Brennan. Mr. Patterson, we've been through your wife's phone. I need you to come down to the station. There are some things you need to see. The Detroit Police Financial Crimes Unit operated out of a building on Beaubien Street, a utilitarian concrete structure that looked exactly like what it was. A place where bad news was delivered and worse news was investigated. Brennan met me in the lobby and escorted me upstairs to a small conference room. Kevin was there, along with another detective, an older black man who introduced himself as Lieutenant James Foster. Mr. Patterson, thank you for coming in, Foster said, gesturing to a chair. We've made significant progress in the last few hours, and we need to discuss next steps. Brennan opened a laptop and turned it toward me. What we're about to show you is disturbing. Are you ready? I nodded, my mouth dry. She pulled up a series of text messages between Jessica and Brandon Cole. The conversation went back months, long before January, when I'd first noticed the suspicious calls. October 15th, Brandon to Jessica. The Riverside couple came through, $72K wired this morning. Your cut is $14,400, the same account? October 15th, Jessica to Brandon. Perfect. This is so much easier than I expected. October 22nd, Brandon to Jessica. New birth mother. Due in January. Healthy, college-educated, no drug history. Could probably get 80 plus for this one. October 22nd, Jessica to Brandon. I have a couple from my company's exec team who've been looking. Let me feel them out. November 3rd, Jessica to Brandon. Confirmed. The Millers will go to 85K. They're desperate. November 3rd, Brandon to Jessica. You're a natural at this. We make a good team. The messages went on and on. Babies discussed like inventory. Prices negotiated like used cars. Birth mothers described by their marketable qualities. Education, appearance, medical history. And Jessica, my wife, right in the middle of it all. Not just aware of what Brandon was doing. Actively participating. Recruiting clients. Negotiating prices. Collecting her cut. How many? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We've identified 17 transactions over the past 14 months, Foster said. Total value approximately $1.2 million. Your wife's share appears to be around $240,000. $240,000. I thought about our joint bank account, our mortgage, our credit cards. Where had the money gone? We found a separate account, Brennan said, reading my expression. Opened last September in your wife's name only. Current balance is $186,000. The rest appears to have been spent on various purchases, clothes, jewelry, a car we haven't located yet. A secret bank account. A secret car. A secret life built on the backs of desperate birth mothers and desperate adoptive parents. The birth mothers, I said. What happened to them? Brennan and Foster exchanged a look. That's where this gets complicated, Foster said. Most of them were paid, typically between $5,000 and $15,000, presented as living expenses and medical costs. Technically legal in Michigan, though the amounts are suspicious. But the real issue is what they were told versus what actually happened. They thought they were placing their babies with carefully screened families, Brennan continued. They went through interviews, saw profiles, believed they were making informed choices. They had no idea their babies were being sold to the highest bidder, or that the screening process was just about ability to pay. And the adoptive parents? Most of them probably don't know anything's wrong, Foster said. They paid high fees, sure, but many legitimate adoptions are expensive. They got their babies through what appeared to be proper legal channels. The paperwork is all there. Birth certificates, adoption decrees, everything filed correctly with the courts. So they get to keep the children? I asked. That's a question for family court, not us, Foster said. Our focus is the criminal enterprise. Human trafficking, wire fraud, money laundering. This is a federal case, Mr. Patterson. The FBI is already involved. The FBI, federal charges. My wife was going to prison. When? I asked. We're executing search warrants tomorrow morning, Brennan said. Hope Springs Adoption Agency, Brandon Cole's residence, and your home. We'll be arresting both Mr. Cole and your wife. Tomorrow morning. Less than 24 hours. My children, I said. Emma and Tyler. They can't be there when you... We understand, Foster said gently. We'll coordinate timing. If you can have them out of the house by 7 a.m., we'll wait until 8 to execute the warrant. I nodded, trying to process everything. Trying to figure out how to explain to a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old that their mother was going to jail. Mr. Patterson, Brennan said, I know this is overwhelming, but I need to ask. Are you willing to cooperate with the investigation? We may need you to testify, to provide additional information about your wife's activities and finances. Yes, I said without hesitation. Whatever you need. Because this wasn't about Jessica anymore. This wasn't about our marriage or my broken heart or my shattered illusions. This was about 17 babies sold like merchandise. About birth mothers manipulated and exploited. About adoptive parents who'd unknowingly participated in a criminal enterprise. This was about justice. And I was going to make sure it was served. The house felt different when I walked back inside. Same furniture, Same family photos on the walls, same toys scattered across the living room floor. But everything had changed. The kitchen clock read 11:47 p.m. In less than 8 hours, federal agents would raid Hope Springs Adoption Agency and arrest Brandon Cole. Jessica would be taken into custody at the Toledo Hotel, where she thought she was conducting legitimate business. I climbed the stairs to check on Emma and Tyler. Both were sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that their world was about to implode. Emma had kicked off her blankets again. I tucked them back around her shoulders, watching her face in the dim glow of her nightlight. She looked so much like Jessica at that age. I'd seen the photos. How was I supposed to tell them their mother was going to prison for selling babies? I couldn't think about that yet. One crisis at a time. Back downstairs, I opened my laptop and started organizing the files Detective Brennan had asked me to compile. Bank statements, text messages, emails, everything I'd discovered over the past 24 hours. I created a folder structure, labeled everything clearly, and uploaded it all to a secure cloud drive the detective had provided access to. My phone buzzed at 12:33 a.m. Detective Brennan. "Just wanted to confirm you're still good for tomorrow," she said when I answered. "I know this is a lot to process." "I'm good. Files are uploaded." "I saw. Thank you." A pause. "Mr. Patterson, I need to prepare you for what happens next. The federal prosecutor will want to interview you extensively. You'll need to testify before a grand jury, and likely at trial if this goes that far. Your wife's defense attorney will paint you as a jealous husband, fabricating evidence." "I know." "Do you have someone who can stay with your kids tomorrow?" "When we execute the warrants, it's going to hit the news fast. Hope Springs is well known in the community. This will be everywhere by noon." I hadn't thought about that. "My sister lives in Ann Arbor. I can call her." "Do it first thing in the morning. And Mr. Patterson, don't answer your door tomorrow unless you know who it is. Once this breaks, you're going to have reporters camping on your lawn." After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, listening to the house settle around me. The refrigerator hummed. The furnace kicked on. Normal sounds from a life that was about to become anything but normal. I must have dozed off on the couch because I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of small feet on the stairs. The clock read 6:52 a.m. "Daddy?" Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. "Why are you sleeping down here?" "Just fell asleep watching TV, sweetie." I sat up, my neck stiff from the awkward angle. "What do you want for breakfast?" The morning routine felt surreal. I made pancakes while Tyler complained about having to do his reading log for school. Emma practiced her spelling words at the kitchen table. Jessica usually handled breakfast on Fridays because I left early for site meetings, but my calendar was clear today. I'd called in sick before the kids woke up. At 7:30, I texted my sister Lauren. "Emergency. Can you come get the kids today and keep them overnight? We'll explain when you get here." Her response came back immediately. "On my way. Be there by 9. I got Emma and Tyler dressed and packed overnight bags for both of them. They were excited. Aunt Lauren had a trampoline and let them stay up late watching movies. They didn't question why I was sending them away on a school day. Lauren arrived at 8:47, her face tight with concern. I walked her to her car while the kids gathered their things. "What's going on, David?" "Jessica's being arrested today. Federal charges. I can't explain everything right now, but it's bad. Really bad. I need the kids away from here when it hits the news." Lauren's eyes widened. "Oh my God. David, please, just take them. Keep them off their tablets, no TV news. I'll call you tonight and explain everything. She nodded, too shocked to argue. 10 minutes later, I watched her SUV disappear down the street with my children inside, and I was alone. My phone rang at exactly 9:00 a.m. Detective Brennan. Warrants are being executed now. FBI is at Hope Springs and the Toledo Hotel. We have teams at Brandon Cole's residence and his office. Do you know where your wife keeps her laptop? Home office, second floor. We'll need to seize it as evidence. I'm sending officers to your location now with a warrant. They'll be there in 20 minutes. Understood. Mr. Patterson, she's in custody. FBI picked her up at the hotel at 8:47. She's being transported to Detroit for processing. I sat down heavily on the bottom step of the staircase. It was real. It was actually happening. The doorbell rang at 9:18. Two FBI agents, both wearing navy windbreakers with yellow letters across the back. They were polite but efficient, handing me the search warrant and asking me to show them to Jessica's office. I watched them bag her laptop, her external hard drive, her file folders full of Hope Springs paperwork. One agent photographed everything before they touched it. The other asked me questions. Did your wife keep any files related to Hope Springs in other locations? Storage unit, safety deposit box, anywhere else? Not that I know of. Did she ever bring clients to this house? No, she always met them at the agency. They were gone by 10:15, leaving me alone in a house that felt like a crime scene. My phone started ringing at 10:47. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again immediately. Another unknown number. Then a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Patterson, this is Valerie Grant from Channel 4 News. We'd like to speak with you about the Hope Springs investigation. I turned my phone to silent and closed all the blinds. By 11 a.m., there were 3 news vans parked on my street. I watched through a gap in the curtains as reporters set up cameras on the sidewalk in front of my house. One of them walked up to my front door and rang the bell. I didn't answer. She rang again, then knocked. Finally, she gave up and returned to her van. My phone screen showed 43 missed calls and 27 text messages. I opened my laptop and searched for Hope Springs. The news was everywhere. Federal agents raid. Birmingham Adoption Agency in Human Trafficking Investigation. Hope Springs Executive Director arrested on baby selling charges. 17 illegal adoptions uncovered in multi-state trafficking ring. I clicked on the Detroit Free Press article. There was a photo of Brandon Cole being led out of the agency in handcuffs. Another photo showed Jessica. They'd used her LinkedIn profile picture, the professional headshot where she's smiling in a navy blazer. The article laid it out. Federal human trafficking charges, illegal adoption scheme, babies sold to highest bidders, birth mothers exploited, adoptive families deceived. The FBI estimated the operation had generated over $1.2 million. Both suspects faced life in prison if convicted. There was a quote from the U.S. Attorney. These defendants treated vulnerable children as commodities to be bought and sold. They exploited desperate birth mothers and deceived families who thought they were participating in legitimate adoptions. This was not an adoption agency. It was a criminal enterprise. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen. Made coffee I didn't drink. Stared at the refrigerator where Emma's artwork was held up with magnets shaped like fruit. My phone buzzed with a call from a number I recognized. Jessica's mother. I answered. David, what the hell is going on? I'm seeing Jessica's face on the news. They're saying. Her voice broke. Tell me it's not true. I can't, Carol. I'm sorry. Where are my grandchildren? They're safe. They're with Lauren. I'm coming over. No, please don't. There are reporters everywhere. I'll call you later. I hung up before she could argue. At 2:15 p.m., Detective Brennan called again. Your wife has been arraigned. Federal magistrate denied bail. She's considered a flight risk. She'll be held at the Wayne County Detention Center pending trial. Did she say anything? She requested an attorney and declined to make a statement. But Mr. Patterson, you should know. Her lawyer is already talking to the prosecutor. She wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Testimony against Brandon Cole in exchange for reduced charges. The prosecutor hasn't decided whether to offer anything yet. Cole is the bigger fish. He ran the operation, recruited the birth mothers, handled the money. Your wife's attorney is positioning her as a subordinate who got in over her head. I almost laughed. Jessica didn't get in over her head. Jessica saw an opportunity and took it. What happens now? I asked. The investigation continues. We're interviewing all 17 adoptive families and trying to locate the birth mothers. Some of them were undocumented immigrants, so that's complicated. We're also looking for other potential victims. We think there might be more transactions we haven't uncovered yet. After she hung up, I sat in the silent house and tried to figure out what I was supposed to do next. The FBI field office in downtown Detroit looked exactly like you'd expect. A concrete fortress with tinted windows that reflected the gray March sky. I sat in a small conference room on the 4th floor, surrounded by boxes of documents I'd spent the last 3 weeks compiling. Special Agent Laura Mitchell sat across from me, her laptop open, taking notes while I walked her through the financial records I'd pulled from Jessica's hidden account. Agent Ryan Foster stood by the window, arms crossed, listening. This transaction here, I pointed to a highlighted line on the spreadsheet, March 12th. Deposit of $42,000, 2 days after the Chicago couple received their baby. Jessica's cut was always 20% of the total. Mitchell nodded, typing. We've confirmed that pattern across all 17 cases. The consistency actually helps us build the case. There's more. I pulled out another folder. I went through our credit card statements going back 18 months. Jessica made regular trips to a clinic in Dearborn, Women's Health Associates. At first, I thought maybe she was having an affair with Brandon there, but then I cross-referenced the dates. Foster turned from the window. And every visit to that clinic corresponds with a birth mother appointment noted in Jessica's emails. I think that's where they were screening the pregnant women, maybe doing medical evaluations before promising them to buyers. Mitchell's expression hardened. We'll subpoena their records today. If the clinic staff knew what was happening, they're accessories. I'd been working with the FBI for 3 weeks now, ever since Jessica's arrest. The kids were staying with my parents in Ann Arbor. I'd told them their mother was away on a work emergency. Emma had asked why the news vans were parked outside our house. I'd said something about a mistake at Mom's company, that everything would be okay. I was lying to my children, adding that to the growing list of things that made me sick. David, we need to talk about the upcoming arraignment, Mitchell said, closing her laptop. The U.S. Attorney wants you to attend. Your cooperation has been invaluable, and having you there sends a message. What kind of message? That even family members won't protect human traffickers, that we have strong witnesses willing to testify. She paused. Jessica's attorney has been making noise about a plea deal. My stomach twisted. What kind of deal? Full cooperation against Brandon Cole in exchange for a reduced sentence. Instead of life, maybe 25 years with possibility of parole. 25 years. Emma would be 34, Tyler would be 32. Their mother would be nearly 60 when she got out, if she got out. She doesn't deserve a deal, I said quietly. Foster spoke up. With all due respect, Mr. Patterson, what she deserves and what helps us isn't always the same thing. Brandon Cole is the architect of this operation. He's been running Hope Springs for 4 years. If there were other employees involved, other networks in other cities, Jessica might be our best chance at uncovering that. You think this goes beyond Detroit? We're looking into it. Cole has connections to adoption facilitators in 3 other states. We've found communications suggesting he might have been operating similar schemes elsewhere, just not as extensively. I thought about that. More babies, more desperate birth mothers, more couples who thought they were legitimately adopting, only to discover they'd participated in buying a human being. If she cooperates fully, I said slowly, if she tells you everything and helps you shut down the whole network, not just the Detroit operation, then okay. But I want to be clear. I'm not asking for leniency. I'm not going to stand up in court and talk about what a good mother she was. No one's asking you to, Mitchell said, but we need to know you won't actively oppose a plea agreement if it serves the investigation. I looked down at the spreadsheets, the bank statements, the emails I'd printed and highlighted. Evidence of my wife's crimes, compiled by my own hands. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a husband who trusted his wife. Now I was a federal witness helping to build a case that would destroy her. I won't oppose it, I said, but I want something in return. Foster raised an eyebrow. What? The 17 babies who were sold. I want to know what happens to them. I want to know that the FBI is making sure they end up somewhere safe, with people who actually went through proper channels. Mitchell and Foster exchanged a look. That's complicated, Mitchell admitted. Most of the adoptive parents had no idea they were participating in anything illegal. They paid money, yes, but many were told it was for medical expenses, legal fees, agency costs. They bonded with these babies. Some of the children are over a year old now. And the birth mothers? We've located 9 of the 17. 2 have requested their children back, and we're working with family court on that. The others signed away their rights, they were paid, but they made that choice understanding they wouldn't raise the children. The other 8 birth mothers were still searching. Some were undocumented, some gave false names. I rubbed my eyes. The complexity of it was overwhelming. 17 children whose entire lives had been built on fraud. There's something else you should know, Foster said. We executed a search warrant on Brandon Cole's home office. We found a safe with additional records, not just Hope Springs cases. What do you mean? Private adoptions he facilitated outside the agency framework. No paperwork, no official records, just cash transactions and forged birth certificates. We're still analyzing everything, but it looks like the 17 cases we know about might be just the tip of this. The room felt smaller suddenly. I'd thought I understood the scope of what Jessica had done. I was wrong. How many more? I asked. We don't know yet. Could be another dozen. Could be more. Mitchell leaned forward. This is why we need Jessica's cooperation. She was Cole's inside person for the Hope Springs operation. But if she knows about these other cases, if she can help us identify the children and the families involved, we can potentially reunite birth mothers who've been searching, or at least ensure the children are in safe situations. When's the arraignment? Friday morning, 9 a.m., at the federal courthouse. 3 days. In 3 days, I'd walk into a courtroom and see my wife in a prison jumpsuit, standing before a judge to hear the charges against her. Human trafficking, wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. The mother of my children. I'll be there, I said. After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time. The concrete walls pressed in around me, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I'd parked on level 3, away from the windows, away from the possibility of anyone seeing me. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Kids are asking when they can come home. Emma wants to know if she can talk to Jessica. I stared at the message. Eventually, I'd have to tell them the truth. Eventually, they'd be old enough to Google their mother's name and find the news articles, the mugshot, the details of what she'd done. But not yet. Not while I could still protect them from it. Soon, I typed back. Tell Emma maybe next week. Another lie. Jessica wasn't allowed contact with anyone except her attorney. Even if she were, what would she say to our daughter? How do you explain to a 9-year-old that mommy helped sell babies for money? I started the car and pulled out of the garage, heading north toward Birmingham. The house would be empty. It had been empty every night since the arrest. I'd been sleeping in the guest room, unable to face our bedroom, the bed we'd shared for 12 years. Tomorrow, I had an appointment with a divorce attorney. Mitchell had recommended someone who specialized in cases involving criminal activity. Apparently, there were special considerations when your spouse was facing federal charges, particularly around asset forfeiture and liability. Everything Jessica had touched was potentially tainted. The money in her secret account would be seized. Our joint accounts might be frozen. The house, the cars, the college funds for the kids, all of it subject to investigation. I pulled into our driveway. The news vans were finally gone, moved on to fresher scandals. Mrs. Kowalski next door was gardening, carefully not looking at my house. The whole neighborhood knew. Of course they did. Inside, I dropped my keys on the counter and stared at the kitchen. Jessica's coffee mug still sat in the sink from the morning of her arrest. I hadn't been able to wash it. My phone buzzed again. This time, an email from Mitchell. Additional evidence located. Need you to review and confirm. Can you come back tomorrow? I typed a response. What time? 10 a.m. I'll be there. I poured myself a glass of water and walked to my home office. The boxes of documents I'd compiled sat stacked against the wall, copies of everything I'd given the FBI. Insurance, Mitchell had called it. Keep your own records. On my desk sat a framed photo from last Christmas. Jessica, me, Emma, and Tyler in matching pajamas, laughing in front of the tree. 4 months ago, a different lifetime. I turned the frame face down and opened my laptop. Time to start documenting everything for the divorce attorney. Time to figure out how to financially survive this. Time to plan for a future I'd never imagined. The future where I was a single father whose wife was in prison for human trafficking. I was still sitting there when my phone rang at 8 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Patterson, this is Christine Wolfe. I'm an investigative reporter with the Detroit Free Press. I should have hung up. Instead, I said, no comment. I understand, but I think you'll want to hear what I've found. I stared at Christine Wolfe's business card, turning it over between my fingers. Detroit Free Press, investigative reporter. Her message had been cryptic but urgent. I've uncovered something about Hope Springs you'll want to hear. Not about your wife, about where the babies came from. That phrase had been eating at me for 3 days. Where the babies came from. The FBI had located 9 of the 17 birth mothers, but 8 remained missing. Agent Mitchell had mentioned they were trying to trace the source, but the records at Hope Springs were deliberately vague. First names only, no addresses, minimal medical histories. I called Christine back on a Tuesday evening after putting Emma and Tyler to bed. My mom had been staying with us for 2 weeks now, helping with the kids while I dealt with a legal avalanche. The divorce papers sat unsigned on my desk. Jessica's attorney had filed a motion to delay proceedings until after the criminal trial, and honestly, I didn't have the energy to fight it. "Mr. Patterson, thank you for calling back." Christine's voice was professional but carried an edge of excitement. "I've been investigating Hope Springs for about 6 weeks now, actually before the arrests. Started when a source tipped me about unusual activity at a women's clinic in Dearborn." "Women's Health Associates," I said. "The FBI mentioned that clinic." "Right. I've been digging into their records, public health inspection reports, business licenses, that sort of thing. The clinic opened 18 months ago, which coincides almost exactly with when Hope Springs ramped up their adoption placements." I grabbed a pen, pulling over a notepad. "What did you find?" "The clinic's ownership structure is buried under 3 layers of LLCs, but I finally traced it. Want to guess who's listed as a silent partner?" My stomach dropped. "Brandon Cole." "Bingo! But here's where it gets worse." I heard papers rustling on her end. "I interviewed a former nurse who worked there until January. She quit because she got uncomfortable with what she was seeing. Young women, mostly immigrants, coming in for prenatal care. Many didn't speak English well. The clinic would offer them free medical care throughout their pregnancy. In exchange for what? The babies. The nurse, her name is Kelly Brennan, no relation to the detective. She said the clinic would identify pregnant women in difficult situations. Undocumented immigrants, refugees, women with addiction issues. They'd offer comprehensive care, housing assistance, even cash stipends. Then when the babies were born, they'd pressure the mothers to sign adoption papers, sometimes within hours of delivery. I felt sick. That's coercion. It gets darker. Kelly said some of the women would disappear after giving birth. They'd be told their baby died or had severe medical issues requiring immediate transfer to a specialist hospital. The mothers would be sedated, and when they woke up, no baby. The clinic would provide falsified death certificates or transfer papers. Jesus Christ! I stood up, pacing my office. Those 8 missing birth mothers, probably deported, scattered, or too afraid to come forward. Many were undocumented. If you're told your baby died and you're in the country illegally, are you going to go to the police? The FBI needs to hear this. They will. I'm running the story tomorrow and I've already shared my findings with Agent Mitchell. But I wanted to talk to you first because there's something else. She paused. Your wife's involvement may have been deeper than the financial records show. My hand tightened on the phone. What do you mean? I found emails between Jessica Patterson and Brandon Cole going back 22 months. They weren't just partners in the adoption sales. She helped him set up the clinic. Her pharmaceutical connections gave them access to medical suppliers, helped them recruit staff. One email from March of last year, she writes, "Found another doctor willing to work with us. He's got immigration issues, needs cash, won't ask questions." I sat down heavily. 22 months. Almost 2 years. While I'd been working late on the Detroit Convention Center project, while we'd been taking the kids to soccer games and school concerts, she'd been building a human trafficking pipeline. "Mr. Patterson, you still there?" Yeah, sorry. It's just, I keep thinking I've hit the bottom of how bad this is, and then there's another level. I understand. Look, I know this is overwhelming, but there's one more thing you should know. The FBI recovered files from Brandon Cole's home safe. You probably heard about that. Agent Mitchell mentioned it. Those files include detailed medical records on the birth mothers, real names, addresses, immigration status. The FBI is using them to track down the missing women. They've already located 2 more in the past week. One was deported to Guatemala, told her baby died. The baby's alive, placed with a family in Ann Arbor. I closed my eyes. God. The family had no idea. They paid $80,000, were told it was a standard private adoption. Now they're facing the possibility of losing a child they've raised for 8 months. What happens to the baby? That's going to be up to the courts. The birth mother wants her child back, but she's in Guatemala with no resources to care for an infant. The adoptive parents are devastated but willing to cooperate. It's a mess, legally and ethically. We talked for another 20 minutes. Christine asked if I'd be willing to provide a statement for her article. Nothing about my personal situation, just confirming the timeline of when I discovered the scheme and contacted authorities. I agreed. The story was coming out regardless. I might as well make sure the facts were accurate. After we hung up, I sat in the dark office for a long time. Through the window, I could see the Kowalski's house across the street, their living room TV flickering blue. Normal people living normal lives, probably watching a sitcom or the news. No idea their neighbor's wife had been selling babies. My phone buzzed. Agent Mitchell. David, I assume Christine Wolfe reached you? Just got off the phone with her. Good. Her investigation corroborates what we've been finding. We're expanding the charges against your wife and Mr. Cole to include conspiracy to commit fraud, practicing medicine without a license through the clinic operation, and additional counts of human trafficking. We've also identified 2 doctors and a nurse practitioner at the clinic who will face charges. Christine mentioned you found 2 more birth mothers. 3 now, as of this afternoon. We located a young woman in Detroit who was told her baby had severe birth defects and was transferred to a specialist hospital. The baby was actually perfectly healthy, sold to a couple in Grosse Pointe for $95,000. Can you reunite them? We're working on it. The legal process is complicated. The adoptive parents have rights too, even though they were deceived. We're trying to arrange supervised visits while the courts sort it out. She paused. David, I need to ask you something. Did Jessica ever mention the clinic to you? Any conversation about Dearborn, about medical facilities, anything? I thought back. She mentioned Dearborn once, maybe 4 months ago. Said she had a client meeting there with a doctor's office considering their pharmaceutical products. I didn't think anything of it. Do you remember which company she said she was meeting with? No, sorry. She talked about work stuff all the time. I tuned out half of it. The admission felt like another failure. That's okay. We have her calendar records. I'm just trying to establish how much she knew about the coercion aspect versus just the financial side. Does it matter? She knew they were selling babies. For sentencing, yes, it matters. If we can prove she knew about the coercion and false death certificates, that's additional charges. But David, I'll be honest, she's already facing life in prison. We have her on 17 counts of human trafficking, wire fraud, money laundering. Even with a plea deal, she's looking at minimum 25 years. 25 years. Emma would be 34. Tyler would be 32. Their mother would be almost 60 when she got out, if she got out. The prosecutor wants to meet with you tomorrow, Agent Mitchell continued. 3 p.m. at the federal building. Can you make it? I'll be there. Bring any additional records you found. Emails, texts, financial statements. Anything that establishes timeline and intent. After she hung up, I went downstairs. My mom was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. Everything okay? She asked, looking up. You look pale. Just more details about the case. It's worse than we thought. She dried her hands, came over and hugged me. I'm so sorry, honey. Those poor babies, those poor mothers. I hugged her back, grateful for her presence. I have to meet with the federal prosecutor tomorrow at 3. Can you pick up the kids from school? Of course. David, have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist? This is a lot to process. I know, I will. I just need to get through the next few weeks first. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me but wasn't going to push. I'll make some tea. You should eat something. I wasn't hungry, but I sat at the kitchen table while she made chamomile tea and heated up leftover pasta. Through the window, I could see my reflection in the dark glass, a tired man in a rumpled shirt, looking older than 36. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. This is Kelly Brennan, the nurse Christine Wolfe mentioned. I have more information about your wife's involvement at the clinic. Can we talk? I stared at the message, then typed back, Yes, when? The federal prosecutor's office occupied the 14th floor of the Theodore Levin United States Courthouse in downtown Detroit. I'd driven past this building 1,000 times in my life, never imagining I'd be inside it, sitting across from an assistant U.S. attorney who was building a human trafficking case against my wife. Mr. Patterson, thank you for coming in. Nathan Greer was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of intense focus that made you feel like you were the only person in the world when he looked at you. I know this has been an incredibly difficult time. That's one way to put it. He didn't smile. I'm going to be direct with you because that's what this case requires. Your wife is facing mandatory minimum sentencing of 10 years on the trafficking charges alone. Realistically, with 17 victims, the financial scope, and the involvement of the clinic operation, we're looking at life imprisonment. I'd known this. Agent Mitchell had told me as much. But hearing it stated so flatly in this sterile conference room made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Brandon Cole is facing the same, Greer continued. However, your wife's attorney has approached us about a cooperation agreement. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means Jessica is willing to provide testimony against Cole in exchange for a reduced sentence. He opened a folder on the table between us. She's claiming Cole masterminded the entire operation, that she was coerced into participation, that she feared for her safety. That's bullshit. The words came out harder than I intended. Greer's expression didn't change. I need you to tell me why. So I did. I walked him through everything I'd found. The text messages showing Jessica's active participation in pricing discussions, her role in establishing the clinic, the pharmaceutical connections she'd leveraged to make it happen. The timeline showing she'd been involved from the beginning, not recruited later. The bank records proving she'd received her cut of every transaction. She wasn't coerced, I said. She was a partner. Greer took notes on a yellow legal pad. The evidence supports that conclusion. But her attorney is skilled, and juries can be unpredictable. A woman, well-educated, mother of 2 young children, claiming she was manipulated by her lover. It's a narrative that could create reasonable doubt. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need more. The text messages are damning, but they're not complete. There are gaps in the timeline, deleted conversations. We need someone who can fill those gaps. Like who? Like the nurse who worked at the clinic, Kelly Brennan. He slid a photograph across the table. A woman in her late 20s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing scrubs. She's been cooperating with our investigation, but she's scared. She worked directly with both Cole and your wife. She saw things, heard conversations, but she's afraid of retaliation. From who? They're both in custody. From whoever else might be involved. Greer leaned forward. Mr. Patterson, this operation didn't exist in a vacuum. Someone provided the legal documentation for these adoptions, falsified birth certificates, court orders. Someone transported these babies. Someone recruited the birth mothers. We've identified 17 transactions, but Cole's records suggest there may be more we haven't found yet. The room felt smaller suddenly. How many more? We don't know. That's what Kelly Brennan might be able to tell us. He paused. She's willing to meet with you. Me? Why? Because you're the one who brought this to light. Because you're a victim too, in a different way. Because she trusts that you want the truth, not just revenge. Greer closed the folder. I can't compel you to do this. But her testimony could be the difference between your wife spending 15 years in prison versus life without parole. It could help us identify other victims, other children who need to be found. I thought about those 8 missing mothers, about babies who might still be out there, sold to families who had no idea, about Emma and Tyler, who would grow up knowing their mother was a monster. When? I asked. Kelly Brennan chose a coffee shop in Ann Arbor, 45 minutes from Detroit. Neutral territory, she'd said through Greer. Somewhere she felt safe. I arrived 15 minutes early and ordered black coffee I didn't want. The place was half empty on a Tuesday afternoon. A few students with laptops, an elderly couple sharing a pastry. Normal people living normal lives. She walked in at exactly 2 o'clock, wearing jeans and a University of Michigan sweatshirt. Younger in person than her photo, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Mr. Patterson? She didn't extend her hand. David, please. We sat at a corner table, away from the windows. She ordered chamomile tea and didn't touch it. Agent Mitchell said you wanted to talk, I said. I wanted to see you. To see if you were… She trailed off, staring at her cup. I don't know what I expected. I'm just trying to understand what my wife did. She did terrible things. Kelly's voice was barely above a whisper. But you probably already know that. I know what the evidence shows. I don't know why. I don't know how she could… I stopped, remembering Greer's warning about not getting emotional. The prosecutor said you worked at the clinic. Women's Health Associates. I was hired 8 months ago as a nurse practitioner. I thought it was legitimate at first. Prenatal care for low-income women, help with adoption placement for those who couldn't keep their babies. She finally looked at me. I was so stupid. When did you realize it wasn't legitimate? About 3 months in. There was a woman, Maria, she said her name was. 22, undocumented, pregnant with her second child. She had a 3-year-old son at home. She came in for prenatal care, and your wife was there that day. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. Jessica told her the baby had died during delivery. But I was there. The baby was healthy, a girl, 7 pounds even. Jessica gave her something, some kind of sedative, and when Maria woke up, they told her the baby was gone, already cremated. No body to see, no funeral. Just gone. The coffee shop sounds faded to white noise. And the baby went to a family in Grosse Pointe 3 days later. They paid $80,000 for a private adoption. They had no idea. How many times did this happen? That I witnessed? 4. But I only worked there 8 months and only 2 days a week. There were other nurses, other days. Kelly's hands shook as she finally lifted her tea. I wanted to go to the police, but Brandon, Mr. Cole, he knew things about me, about my immigration status, about my student loans. He said if I talked, I'd lose everything. But you're talking now. Because I saw the news, saw that 17 babies were involved, and I realized it was so much bigger than what I'd seen. And because she met my eyes. Because I kept thinking about those mothers, about Maria, going home to her son without her daughter, about the families who think they adopted legally, about those babies growing up never knowing the truth. The prosecutor needs you to testify about Jessica's involvement specifically. I know. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, then turned it toward me. A photograph of Jessica at the clinic, wearing a white coat, holding a clipboard, standing next to Brandon Cole, both of them smiling. I took this because I thought it was strange. Why would a pharmaceutical marketing director be working at a prenatal clinic? I looked her up later, saw her LinkedIn profile, her professional history. None of it made sense. When was this taken? Last November, about 3 weeks before the clinic closed. She swiped to another photo. Jessica and Brandon in what looked like an office, papers spread across a desk between them. This one's from October. I took it through the office window. They were arguing about something. I heard Jessica say they needed to slow down because they were attracting attention. Can you send these to me? Already sent them to Agent Mitchell, but yes. Her fingers moved across her phone. There's more. Conversations I overheard, documents I photographed. Your wife wasn't coerced, Mr. Patterson. She was careful, methodical. She's the one who suggested using the pharmaceutical connections to get the sedatives they used on the mothers. She's the one who found the lawyer who created the false documentation. The betrayal hit me again, fresh and sharp. Not just that Jessica had done this, but that she'd been so good at it. So calculating. Will you testify? I asked. Kelly nodded slowly. If they can protect me. If they can guarantee Brandon and Jessica can't hurt me. She paused. And if you can promise me something. What? That you'll help find those mothers, the ones who think their babies died. They deserve to know the truth. I thought about Maria, going home without her daughter. About 8 other women out there somewhere, carrying that same grief. I promise, I said. The trial began on a cold morning in late October, nearly 8 months after Jessica's arrest. The federal courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, cameras, and protesters holding signs that read, "Justice for stolen babies," and "Life sentences for child traffickers." I didn't attend most of the proceedings. My lawyer advised against it, said it would be too difficult, that the media would turn me into a spectacle. But I was there for Kelly Brennan's testimony, sitting in the back row of the gallery while she walked the jury through everything she'd witnessed at the clinic. Jessica sat at the defense table in a gray suit her attorney had chosen to make her look sympathetic. She didn't look at me once during the 3 days I was there. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she was still pretending I didn't exist, the way she'd pretended our marriage didn't matter while she was building her criminal enterprise. Brandon Cole's trial was separate, scheduled for January. The prosecution was using Jessica's testimony against him as part of her plea agreement, 15 years instead of life, with possibility of parole after 12. 15 years for helping sell 23 babies. They'd found 6 more cases beyond the original 17. 23 children. 23 mothers. 23 families torn apart by greed. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Jessica cried when the judge read the sentence. 15 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years supervised release. Her mother sobbed in the gallery. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. I felt nothing. Just a hollow space where my anger used to be. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later in a nearly empty courtroom. Jessica appeared via video link from the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut, where she'd been transferred after sentencing. She signed the papers electronically. I signed mine in person. 12 years of marriage dissolved in 11 minutes. The judge awarded me full custody of Emma and Tyler. Jessica would be allowed supervised video calls once a month, letters as often as she wanted to write them. When I told the kids their mother was going to be away for a very long time, Emma asked if she'd done something bad. Tyler asked if it was his fault. No, I told them both, pulling them close. This has nothing to do with you. Your mother made choices, bad choices, and now she has to face the consequences. But she loves you, and I love you, and we're going to be okay. I wasn't sure I believed it, but I said it anyway. That's what parents do. By Christmas, we'd established a new rhythm. My mom moved in permanently to help with the kids while I worked. Emma started seeing a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma. Tyler threw himself into soccer, practicing in the backyard until it got too dark to see the ball. We didn't talk about Jessica much. Her monthly video calls lasted maybe 10 minutes. Awkward conversations where she asked about school and the kids gave one-word answers. She sent letters they rarely opened. I kept them all in a box in my closet, thinking maybe someday they'd want to read them. The FBI's investigation continued to expand. By spring, they'd identified 31 babies total, traced back to Hope Springs and 2 other agencies Brandon Cole had connections with in Ohio and Indiana. 16 birth mothers were located and offered counseling, legal assistance, and in 3 cases, reunification with their children after lengthy court proceedings. Maria, the young mother Kelly had told me about, was one of them. The Grosse Pointe family who'd adopted her daughter agreed to an open adoption arrangement, visits, photos, ongoing contact. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. A chance for healing, however incomplete. Kelly Brennan entered witness protection after receiving death threats from someone connected to the Ohio operation. Agent Mitchell told me she'd relocated out of state, started over with a new identity. I hoped she found peace. Nathan Greer, the prosecutor, sent me a letter after the trial thanked me for my cooperation. He said cases like this rarely had such clear documentation, that my willingness to come forward had made all the difference. I filed the letter away and tried not to think about what it cost me to be that willing. On a warm evening in June, almost a year after Jessica's arrest, I sat in the backyard watching Emma and Tyler play on the swing set. Emma was reading a book while swinging, her legs pumping absently. Tyler was trying to see how high he could go, his laughter carrying across the yard. My neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, waved from her garden. We'd made peace over the winter. She'd brought over a casserole one night and apologized for avoiding me. Said she hadn't known what to say, but that wasn't an excuse for not trying. I'd accepted the apology and the casserole, and now we were friendly again in that careful way neighbors are when they've seen each other's worst moments. I thought about trust a lot during that year, about how I'd given it so freely to Jessica, never questioning, never verifying, about how that blind faith had allowed terrible things to happen right under my nose. But I also thought about the other kind of trust, the kind I was slowly rebuilding with my children, with my friends, with myself. The kind that acknowledged people could hurt you but chose to stay open anyway. The kind that said maybe the world was full of people like Jessica and Brandon, but it was also full of people like Kelly and Agent Mitchell and Nathan Greer, people who fought for what was right even when it was hard. Emma looked up from her book. "Dad, can we have ice cream?" "After dinner," I said. "Can we have pizza for dinner?" I smiled. "Sure, why not?" Tyler jumped off the swing mid-arc, landing in a heap and popping up laughing. "Can I pick the toppings?" "We'll vote," I said. "Democracy in action." They raced inside to find the pizza place menu, arguing good-naturedly about pepperoni versus sausage. I followed them slowly, taking one last look at the backyard, the swing set, the garden I'd neglected, the fence that needed painting. A year ago, I'd thought I had a perfect life. Perfect wife. Perfect family. Perfect future. I'd been wrong about all of it. But standing there in the doorway, listening to my children debate pizza toppings, I realized something. Perfect was a lie people told themselves to avoid looking too closely at the truth. Real life was messy and complicated, and sometimes heartbreaking. Real life was also resilient. It was Emma learning to trust again despite what her mother had done. It was Tyler's laughter echoing through a house that had seen too much sadness. It was me, getting up every morning and choosing to keep going even when it would have been easier to give up. The truth I'd learned, the hard, painful truth that cost me everything, was this. You can't protect yourself from betrayal by refusing to trust. You can only protect yourself by choosing carefully who deserves that trust and by having the courage to act when it's broken. Jessica had taught me what betrayal looked like. Emma and Tyler were teaching me what recovery looked like. I chose recovery. Brandon Cole was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole in February of the following year. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and Jessica's testimony sealed his fate. He showed no remorse during sentencing, claiming he'd been providing a service to families who desperately wanted children. The judge disagreed. Of the 31 children identified in the investigation, 7 were ultimately reunited with their birth mothers through various legal arrangements. The others remained with their adoptive families, though several agreed to open adoption agreements allowing contact with the biological mothers. 3 cases remained in family court litigation for years. The Women's Health Associates Clinic was permanently closed. 2 doctors and 1 nurse practitioner were convicted of conspiracy and served prison sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years. I sold the house in Birmingham and moved to a smaller place in Royal Oak, closer to my parents. Emma and Tyler adjusted better than I expected. Children are resilient in ways adults forget. Jessica served 11 years of her 15-year sentence before being released on parole. By then, Emma was 20 and Tyler was 18. They'd both declined to maintain contact with her after turning 16. She wrote them letters they never opened. I saw her once after her release by accident at a grocery store in Detroit. She looked older, thinner, her hair gray at the temples. Our eyes met across the produce section. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it and turned away. I let her go. There was nothing left to say. The lesson I carried forward, the one I taught my children, was this. Trust is not weakness, but it must be earned and continually proven. Love is not blind. Real love sees clearly and chooses to stay anyway. And when someone shows you who they truly are, believe them the first time. Jessica showed me exactly who she was. I just hadn't been looking. I was looking now. And I would never stop.